Okay. All right. Well, welcome. We have a full set of tables here in the cube, and welcome to the folks on the Zoom. This is Central Park United Neighbors Annual Forum, Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Second. So quick welcome and about Central Park United Neighbors. CPUN is the Registered Neighborhood Association, or RNO, for the Central Park community. We provide a working forum for the residents of Central Park to participate in creating, developing, and fostering a vibrant urban community dedicated to social equity, environmental responsibility, and economic opportunity. At our monthly meetings, we facilitate the discussion of key issues with neighbors, engage in proactive problem prevention and amicable problem solving, and CPUN is committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment to all members of our community. Our mission is the betterment of the city of Denver by providing a forum for the residents living in Central Park to discuss and resolve issues, provide a network of communication, a means of acting on matters of importance to the community as a whole, and we promote public service, civic discourse, and collective efficacy. We're an all-volunteer board of Central Park residents and a registered 501c3, and I am Liz Stolniker, the board president. And we'll just do a quick look at the agenda and move right into it. So we are going to have our vote on the board slate to welcome our new board members. And then we'll have guest speakers, Councilwoman Lewis and Councilmember Parady, for updates from their offices and a quick Q&A. And then we also have guest speakers on development updates. We have Lee Ferguson from Brookfield Properties, and actually a few folks associated with the shops at Northfield project and rezoning that's kind of currently working its way through the city process. Then after that, we'll have just a quick break so that folks who've arrived a little later are able to grab some food and drink and stretch. And then we will jump into the presentation on the results of our 2025, I should say Central Park Community Survey. And that will be Heather Tabano will be presenting that. We'll have a discussion on the results, and then just at the very end, a quick look ahead to what's happening in June. And so for folks who typically present as our community partners, we won't have that on the agenda today, and we'll have extra time on our June agenda so that we'll be able to cover those updates. So let's, Brian, I'm gonna ask you to remind me on this process, but I think generally I will introduce the slate of new members and returning members, and then just basically everybody who is an eligible member of Central Park.
Have to ask for objections.
Yep. Just if anybody wants to object, they can, otherwise the slate moves forward. So our new members, I guess, as I mean, you could stand up just really quickly, wave. So Kathy O'Bear.
Hello, hello.
Okay. John Parrish.
Hi.
And Elizabeth Silva de Balboa. Okay. And then for returning members, we can go through that. Matt Blackburn. Okay. Jamie Hodgkins is not here because she had a schedule conflict. Brian Penny. Tommy Phillips. Jack Seward, who is not here tonight unless he's on Zoom. And then Stolniker. I think just really quickly for our new members, I think we did this last year, just a quick introduction from the folks who are joining the board, just so that everybody can get to know a little bit about you. We've read your statements, but for folks in the meeting who haven't met you before, Kathy, if you want to start.
Like, what do you want us to talk about?
Probably this much because we got a really full agenda, but just, you know, who you are, how long you've been in the neighborhood, why you're interested in joining CPUN.
Been in the neighbors in 217, Kathy O'Bear. I want to get involved, especially on equity issues, education issues, just trying to make, you know, Central Park live up to what it says it's supposed to be. So I'm delighted to be a part.
Thank you. Great. John?
Yeah, John Parrish. I live up in Willow Park East. I've been here for actually about 9 years, almost to the day. So we moved in on one of the original builds, and yeah, I'm just really excited to learn a lot and and work with you all here for the next year or so.
And Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Silva de Balboa. I live, I guess technically North End, up near the Arsenal, off of Dallas in the 60s. And I've been in the Central Park neighborhood since the fall of 2019. And I'm excited. I've got kids in, on the Northfield campus, so I'm interested in safe streets for them up there at 58 in Central Park. And just thinking along the lines of acting locally and thinking globally.
And I think that for, does anybody have any objections to this slate of new members? Be online? Okay, do we actually have to vote on it? Nope, okay, all right, well, welcome, thank you. Cycling off Trisha Houston and Courtney Dixon are cycling off. So I just want to thank them for being board members for the past few years and wish them, I know that they're involved in a lot of other things in the neighborhood. So we'll have other points of collaboration going forward. Okay, so, well, now that we have the board slate voted on, we'll move into updates from the city council members. So Councilwoman Lewis and Councilmember Parady, I think if you both want to, I think possibly the way to do this is maybe if you could each give your updates and then we can have just a Q&A session that's joint. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Separately, we'll answer together, so you can't stop us.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that we're just not looking at the slide deck the whole time. So go for it.
All right. Good. I dive in. Okay. So I wanted to start with the Go Bond projects in the district. And the Go Bond in its entirety for us to talk about it. So in March and April, we had a number of community meetings in partnership with the mayor or other council offices, in which bond proposals were submitted by community, either through those community meetings or via a survey. And so over the past couple of months, those proposals have been filtered through the Department of Finance through some mechanism that is unknown to many of us on council. Nonetheless, we did land at a number of proposals as well as subcommittees. So housing facilities, recreation centers, and libraries was one of the subcommittees. Connectivity, which deals with streets, parks, trails, and climate, arts and cultural venues, and then safe communities. I landed on the housing facilities, recreation centers, and libraries, which I was actually very excited about. From there, these projects are now going to go to the executive committee, which meets every Monday at from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. You can attend those meetings online or in person at the web building. We're happy to send out information to Liz if you all are interested in that. The executive committee will then consider the bond package as a whole, so not just individual council districts, but as the city as a whole. And they have to do so before the end of July so that we can get that referred to the ballot in November. And so you all ultimately get to decide if we move forward with the bond process or not. And if the projects that are presented to you all as a package reflect the needs that you all have as communities. So for District 8 specifically, there were 7 ranked as tier 1. So they had different tiers, I think 4, Jesse, 4? 3, okay. 3 different tiers. One's the highest, 3's the lowest. So we had several that were, or 7 that were in the tier 1. So East Colfax Library, as well as East Colfax Recreation Center, the Montbello Amphitheater, the Montbello Library renovation, the Ari P. Taylor Senior Center expansion, crime prevention through environmental design, and then we were also able to get some dollars, some on the list, social housing. We'll see. There were 5 ranked as tier 2 or tier 3, which is the 303 Artway, the Montbello Loop, the asphalt plant rehabilitation, the Airlawn Bridge replacement over Quebec, and then the Northfield Library. In addition to that, the Park Hill Golf Course, the Park Hill Park, which is formerly the Park Hill Golf Course, was budgeted for $150 million. Otherwise, the number of projects were just like for pedestrian improvements as well. And those are the Flash and Beacon or the hawk lights at the Central Park Rec Center, the thoroughway improvements from Northfield to 47th, which we heard quite a bit about our constituent services person, and then Central Park and MLK improvements again. So I'll just name that. I wanted to, because I haven't asked for you all, of course I do, that's who I am as a person. I wanted to bring light to the past two bond, the previous two bonds between 2015 and 2025. Just did the great honor of going through those bond projects to see what were some of the projects that came to Council District 8. And there was about a total of $68 million that Council District 8 received. While that does seem like a large number, it's actually not equitable in terms of its distribution to Council District 8 because it's about 12% of the entire bonds previously. And a lot of the projects that were included in there were not things that were necessarily asked of by community. So I'll tell you what those, there were 46 projects, 19 of those were simple road repavings. Additional 12 of those improvements were for the Department of Safety, including the construction of a new police station and improvements to the fire stations. But outside of safety and road projects, the highest single project amount was $7 million for a homeless shelter on 48. And so in addition to it not being distributed equal, the projects just are equitably, the projects also weren't reflective of like the needs in our community. And so we're hoping to shift that. This is where I have an ask of you because we have our projects, we can send those out to you, the ones that tiered 1, 2, or 3. And I want you all to reach out to the executive committee and tell them that and ask them to continue to keep our priorities in mind as they are making decisions for the bond project. I will say, and Jesse, you can opine if you'd like, Jesse had the opportunity, my kid graduated this weekend, so I was out of pocket, but Jesse was in pocket. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Yeah, college, no more tuition. It's great. Jesse was able to attend the first executive meeting, and maybe you can talk just briefly about the tenor of that, because I think it's important for you all to know.
Yeah, so the first executive committee meeting was staffed mostly by the chairs of the various subcommittees that Councilwoman was speaking to earlier. And basically, they all gave a report out of all of the subcommittee work that has been conducted over the past month or two, and just gave sort of a list of their highest priority projects or projects that they thought needed a little bit of explanation for the committee when they're considering. And so really what came out of that is that there's something on the order of, I think, $3 billion of bond projects against 800 million that is sort of the projected amount. Like the total bond package amount is going to vary a little bit, but it's not going to vary from 800 million to all the way up to the 3 billion. And so there is kind of a lot of internal pressure and internal competition in terms of the kinds of projects that will be selected. And I think that was really the main tenor of the report that came from executive committee in their first meeting is basically all of these subcommittees have ordered quite a lot of projects, quite a high dollar amount. And so really it's about getting community organized to advocate on behalf of the bond projects within districts that will sort of rise to the surface and be included for the vote in November on the final bond package. I will also just mention that the connectivity subcommittee, which deals with, as Councilwoman mentioned, streets, but it also includes pedestrian infrastructure. The way that they have sort of tiered their bond projects, we submitted a number on behalf of Central Park, including the hot lighted, the Central Park Rec Center to help people cross the street safely. The connectivity bond subcommittee did not consider those projects individually, but instead created sort of a bucket or a slush fund of flashing beacon projects across the city. So that would be included there instead of as a specific individual project. Other than that, I think that was the tenor of the first executive committee meeting. Public comment for executive committee begins on Monday, the 27th. There's a sign up form online. Again, we'd be happy to provide all of that information to Liz and for distribution to you guys. But that public testimony is going to be kind of important in just building up the need for these projects in community to the executive committee members.
I will just flag the fund that he was discussing. It does make me nervous that it was presented in that way because it doesn't provide me, at least as a council member, with what the priority projects would be. It would just kind of be within the power, if you will, of the administration and his employees. Nonetheless, it is what it is and it's what we're working with, but it does make me nervous that it was cast in that way. All right. Do you want me to move on to the second question? Sure. Great. I wasn't sure. Okay. So potential budget freezes. So we just had a conversation with a budget retreat with city council members. And essentially it was, what should our budget priorities be? And it's really hard to define what your priorities are when you're operating in a space of such uncertainty. We haven't gotten a lot of information from the administration. We have met with the Department of Finance to be able to figure out what are we potentially anticipating in terms of like that the loss of federal dollars or the loss of federal grants within the city, and we just don't have a good a number at this point, at least from the Department of Finance. So we're expecting for us to be in tough budget times. We just don't know what that looks like from the state level, from the federal level. And so I don't know if we are going to have budget freezes. I don't know if we're going to have furloughs. I don't know if we're going to have layoffs. We don't really know a lot. And if Sarah knows more than me, great. She can answer these questions for you. But I can commit to Jesse coming back when we do have more information. I have made it a habit that when I'm meeting with a department, I do ask them what their reliance is on federal grants and dollars so that I can begin to get a understanding of what the potential loss might be. But unfortunately, I gave you a lot of nothing until I have something. Okay. Sarah.
Sure. And thank you all for having me. I think I came to this RNO probably nearly 2 years ago when I was first elected and haven't been back since. There's like 200 of them in the city. So I'm one of your at-large council members. So I represent everybody here, everybody in Denver, along with my colleague, Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez, who's lovely and probably has been here herself. So our job is both the same in the sense that all 13 of us just have a vote on everything. We all can function the same way, and very different in that we're trying to kind of like take a citywide approach and balance a lot of the like equities across the city. So yeah, I guess I'm laughing a little bit about those of you guys who are stepping up to serve on this board because it's like a gateway to public service. Like just be warned, you're gonna raise your hand for your RNO, and the next thing you know, you're gonna be in my case, it was the Colorado Women's Bar Association that I was like, okay, fine, and now here I am. Before I'm also newly elected along with, I mean, not that newly, but this most recent round along with Councilwoman Lewis. And before that was an attorney. I had a small civil rights and workers' rights practice for quite a long time. But just was really concerned about some of what I was seeing among my clients. I felt like as the cost of living skyrocketed in Denver, that really impacted people in this like super noticeable way. Like I just suddenly had a lot of people coming to me and saying, I lost my job and now I'm living in my car. I was hospitalized for a period of time and now I'm about to be evicted, that kind of thing. And it felt like these red alarm bells of like something's going wrong. And usually I think local is the place to detect that kind of stuff. So I completely love this job. I will say on behalf of Serena and myself, I'm sure you're on Councilmember Lewis's mailing list, but get on ours as well, because we represent you. You have 3 council members. And my council email address is really annoying, but it's Parady, which is my last name, at the word. So Parady at large at, and then the denvergov.org. I can write that down for anyone who needs it. I don't know that I brought my cards, or you can find me on my council website. We have some public engagement stuff coming up, some legislation going through, and then same thing, we're really focused on the bond, the budget, and also the Excel franchise agreement, which will probably be on your fall ballot, which I can talk a little bit about. So on June 9th, if you're part of any groups that do sort of policy advocacy of any kind. So we've invited a lot of these organizations that do like Together Colorado, Coloradans for the Common Good, folks that do housing advocacy, worker advocacy, climate advocacy, all those things. We've invited them on June 9th to come and show up to council and do like a lobby day, the way folks will sometimes do at the state legislature. I don't know if anyone's participated in one of those with an organization, but they're really effective. It's just a way of turning out a lot of people at the same time and having access to come to the building and ask kind of whatever questions. Council's never really done those before. So community groups approached us with that idea during the last legislative session and sort of said, do people ever do this with council? And we said, let's set it up. So we're going to do that on June 9th. If there's any organizations you're a part of that that might want to join and just come kind of have a, chat with council members. Tomorrow night, co-sponsored with my fellow at-large representative, we have a forum with the Office of the Independent Monitor, which is our safety oversight agency. And I won't get into the details, but if you have concerns about oversight in that area, it would be well worth coming to. And then there's a wonderful staff member in my office who does some really excellent trainings that she'll do for just about any kind of group. Like her joke is, I'll do it for your knitting club, I'll do it for your soccer team, that are just sort of on City Council 101. So how does the council work? It's a weird process and body in a lot of ways. It took me time to learn it. And it's year round, we're always going. So she'll do that training. She'll do trainings on the city budget if people are interested in that. So any group you have that you think would care about that, she's done it all over town, and it's one of our favorite things to do, just to get people more engaged with us as kind of a body. And then I have an upcoming constituent coffee that I now don't have the date of on the tip of my tongue, so I'll try to look that up. I won't pause and do it now. Policy wise, things that my office is working on right now that are sort of moving through council. We're working on a whole set of issues around parking. One of them is to get into compliance with a new state law, which is essentially requiring Denver to remove minimum parking requirements for new development. And so we're doing that. I think it's a good policy. I understand why the state legislature passed it. And what I really come to think about it is that I understand the need for us to manage parking, but requiring this large numbers of spots that are pretty inflexible for every single new development and not having any kind of ability to tailor that is just adding time, cost. It's using basically like half of the time of one city planner, which we do not have enough planners for that. And it's not getting us the policy outcomes that we want in terms of parking, because even at peak times in residential buildings, about 40 to 50% of the spaces are empty. So we were requiring them to be built, but then people aren't filling them. And that's probably partly because we allow buildings to charge for parking. And so sometimes there's people living in the building who aren't able to pay for a spot, and so they're parking on the street after we require the parking to be built. So it's sort of the wrong policy. More and more cities around the country are going away from that. And what I'm interested in seeing us do instead is potentially remove the ability to charge separately for parking, so that if you're in a building, you have a spot and then you're presumably parking in it, and then also move towards mobility benefit districts, which a number of cities have started to do. And it just allows a particular part of a city to focus in on how you're using the public parking that we own, which is street parking and sometimes lots, and solve for whatever the parking issues really are in that area. So East Colfax in Councilwoman Lewis's district has been doing like a study on this, and they want to they're proposing things like, for example, renting unused lot space, the mobility district paying for that, offering that to employees of businesses along East Colfax, so they're not parked in a metered spot for 8 hours, taking that up, and then allow the parking spots to flip more often and be used by people who are shopping or, there for a shorter period of time. So it's just an example, but there's a lot I think we could do with parking. The parking minimums are not getting us into the world we want, and oftentimes it might be the difference. Like, we're so rigid about requiring a certain number of parking spots that you can end up really tipping the cost of like an affordable housing development, where if they could shave off 10 or 15 spots, it would, transform their sort of balance sheet for the project, or not require them to do a big concrete pad or something like that. The other thing I'll say about that is just that parking is one thing where I actually think the market works. You're not going to see large commercial developments not providing parking. You're not going to see high-end residential developments not requiring parking because their banks and their insurers are going to require it, but they have that flexibility of like, if it's really about, 10, 20 spots or something like that, they don't have these ridiculous city requirements. So we're just getting ourselves out of that business, not, doing all the math and algebra and weird calculations that we've been doing for years. That's moving through council. We're working on authorizing fire code regulations that would allow for safe single stairwell buildings, which really unlocks a huge amount of housing potential in the city, because if you don't have to build 2 stairwells, you can imagine that creates a much smaller size of lot that would support a residential building. And they tend to, just because of design features, result in a lot more 3 and 4 bedroom units. And so you get just these little buildings that have maybe 5 stories, and each one is an apartment. And you can make that safe if you regulate the fire stairwells very carefully. And Denver Fire Department is on board with a package of regulations that hopefully we'll be able to get through like this fall. And so that, without any rezoning, would do more than probably any other kind of policy to just unlock a lot of housing potential in the city that, you know, on lots that a developer already owns, but could only build maybe like a 2-story building on right now. So that's something I'm working on. And then yeah, lots of other stuff. We're working on considering sending ranked choice voting to the voters here in Denver. I was opposed to the state level bill about that because the state is structured around parties, but we're nonpartisan already. And so the idea, and we're all on your same ballot already. So the idea of ranked choice voting, I think, works really well for Denver. It would save us the cost of a runoff and would save us the huge drop in turnout that we get during our runoffs. So you would just rank all of your candidates on your ballot. And then the winner would be selected that way. Instant runoff is another way of describing that. So yeah, lots of other policies in the works, but those are probably the most live right now. And then in terms of the bond and the budget, you know, the scale of the bond, we're actually lucky, I think, to be heading into this time of like budget uncertainty and potentially reduced federal infrastructure funding, to be coming to the end of a bond cycle where we have paid off and completed that past cycle of projects and are at the moment of being able to issue a new bond package. It's good timing because we need that kind of money right now, because that's a lot of what we're fearing will be cut at the federal level, although it's true there's not a lot of certainty about that yet. And our agencies are seeing like suddenly a certain reimbursement portal will just close, and then it will like reopen. They're not getting like communication like we're cutting off this grant. It's just sort of been chaos for them. So we don't exactly know what's happening, but I'm assuming, we have to assume, that a lot of our federal funding will be lost. We're not heavily federally funded, but it does tend to come into play mostly in our public health department and then infrastructure, transit and infrastructure projects. And yeah, and economic development, that's right. Yeah, so for scale, when agencies were asked to submit projects that they wanted to be considered for the city's 6-year cycle of capital improvement funds, so not the bond, but just the normal money that we allocate for that kind of stuff in the budget, but similar types of projects, the amount of all those projects added up to $7 billion. And we're issuing an $800 million bond. And then we have a slightly higher amount, but a pretty similar amount in like capital improvement funds that we would usually spend. So that's where this bond process, it is really competitive. And part of the way I think about my job as an at-large member, it's interesting that Councilwoman Lewis mentioned the bundles that agencies submitted, where they would say, for example, instead of bond committees selecting like specific playgrounds around the city, give us the money to build 10 playgrounds and then we'll choose. I actually think before council votes on any bond package, we should make them do the analysis of which playgrounds or which, you know, there's a lot of these bundles, like which trails, which, et cetera. But in my subcommittee, which was the one related to parks, trails, playgrounds, and climate, weirdly, we asked the executive committee to, if they include any of these bundles in their recommended bond package, to include the metrics, which would be like, just to choose playgrounds as the example, basically the only factors that should be weighed in that would be age of the playgrounds and then equity. So looking at, you know, you can think of equity in different ways, right? Like distance to a playground, the neighborhood having less investment in the past, being a nest neighborhood, a lot of different things like that. But basically we're asking them to look at equity and look at the age of the playgrounds. So, because some of them are pretty old. So similar metrics across different bundles. And I definitely think council should know those bundles should be unbundled before we vote. So from the at-large point of view, we were trying to know what our colleagues' priorities were, trying to advocate for some of the top priorities that our district colleagues had, but with a sort of a thumb on the scale towards that thought of like, where has been more invested in and where has been less invested in the past. And it's, you know, an art, not a science, but I know Councilwoman Gutierrez and I were both thinking about that. And then we were also thinking about projects that would be more transformative for the city as a whole. So as an example of that, we've been advocating for I think the single biggest climate project that Denver could do. Denver has the potential right now to build a completely passive water system that would pull heat out of water that's already been heated for home use. It could even loop in all of our wastewater at the wastewater facility because wastewater is really warm. Pull that heat out and it could replace the need for 2 entire Excel substations downtown. It's a project that our climate office has proposed. It would be a big swing. There's some Excel funding available for that right now. So that's the kind of thing we're sort of pushing in the bond is stuff that like is going to make a huge impact for the city as a whole because power generation, climate change problems are just not going away for any of us, right? And then we also advocated along with Councilmember Lewis's office to start getting our housing department working on a cross subsidization model. So they're investing in mixed income housing. You've probably heard your councilwoman talk about this, but investing in mixed income housing where the higher rents subsidize the lower rents and the housing ends up being a self-sustaining sort of cost center that pays for itself over time and gives bond capacity to pay for more housing instead of it being like a sinkhole of funds, basically. And that was put in tier 1 and raised to the attention of the executive committee, which I'm really glad about. And then we've also advocated, I think we unfortunately probably need another family shelter in Denver, probably not in District 8. And then I'm on the Denver Opioid Abatement Commission. And so there's some pieces that come out of that, like trying to do a better job of providing like sustained opioid treatment in our jail so that if people are there, they can access that treatment, leave, have a transition of services, all of which is so incomprehensibly complicated. Like there's Medicaid traps and there's fire restrictions on keeping the kind of drugs that you use to treat opioid addiction, like the crazy stuff. But we're working really hard on improving that because that's one of the places where we could most impact the addiction crisis in the city. So that's just some of the stuff that I'm doing and interested in. And there's more, but that's enough for now. I'm done. Oh, it's 7:09, sorry.
No, that's okay. We have a brief time for questions. There is one on the Zoom that I'll get out that I think is relatively quick. It's from Amy Campbell. Any updates regarding the Go Bond about improvements to Smith Road and or the Sand Creek Regional Greenway?
The Greenway, I believe, made it to a tier 1 project by the Park Subcommittee. So I think that one sort of elevated to the attention of the executive committee. I'm 99% sure of that. I can pull it up. But I don't know about Smith Road.
I will say that the Smith Road expansion did make it to the executive committee, but I am not sure if that landed as a tier 3 or a tier 2. I can get back to Amy or the Safe Streets Committee on the Smith Road projects.
You mentioned that the projects from the previous bond had been completed, but what about the Central Park Boulevard and MLK? And
Yeah, they're
is
not
that
all
gonna happen?
done. They're sort of financed, planned. So we know how much they're costing. They're penciled out. They're underway for the most part, is my understanding. And you would know the projects in your exact district better than me. So, but we have bond capacity again.
Yeah, so I can speak to Central Park and MLK. We have been in conversation with Dottie since Councilwoman was inaugurated about those improvements. That funding is, the design work on Central Park and MLK has been completed. So the construction should be starting. As far as I understand it from Dottie, there are 2 open tickets, construction tickets for the actual work to begin on Central Park and MLK. That's about as much as we've been able to get from Dottie. There is about $75 million remaining in funds that have been financed, to Councilmember Parady's point, but haven't been spent yet. But in terms of the mill levy hit, it's already been taken off of the mill levy. So that money is available. We did submit personally a new ticket for the Central Park and MLK project in the new bond, just to make sure that it does get done, because I know it has been there for at least the last 5 years of bond cycle, if not the 5 years before that. So that is something that we are actively working with Dottie to make sure that it doesn't slip between the cracks, because we know it's been on there and it's been, it was included for the last bond package. So just making sure that it gets done.
You should not have said finished. I should have said like, the city feels like it knows what they're all gonna cost, you know, at this point, and so, and we've paid off enough of the debt to issue more, basically.
Jesse, is there a way we could get you to have somebody from Dottie come to one of our meetings to give us an update for that project?
Yeah, so Maggie Thompson is the Dottie point of contact. I know that Maggie has actually showed up at the monthly CPUN meetings before. So we can definitely work with her to try to get her to come.
Amy and I have a meeting with Maggie on the 28th.
If there's two construction tickets, what is the construction for?
Yeah.
Would be useful information just to understand, like, is it like the traffic light design, or is it something else about the intersection design that they're gonna be working on?
The council's highest priority is coming out of our budget retreat, again, knowing there's a ton of budget uncertainty, was bike and pedestrian safety infrastructure and safe routes to school. So we very much congealed around that as a group.
Maybe that's a good segue. So Safe Streets, so thinking about the Northfield campus on 56th, I tried to follow along. A lot of you were closer to it, but where are we with that? Like, money was allocated already, it was in the plan, but then nobody's actually building it. Pedestrian crossing, is that in your purview? Is that?
That's still sort of in the early development stages and
Yeah.
discussion with Park Creek in particular and Dottie.
So money's
and school
allocated,
districts.
it was supposed to be, it was in the plan or something.
No, money's not.
No.
So
Okay.
not for that.
And
Okay.
that's a complicated issue, but that's secondary to anything. So that wouldn't be part of the bond.
Right.
Issue.
Right. Okay.
But there is, I think, Carol, like the Safe Streets Committee actually just sent a letter to the District 8 office today.
I did.
Which I think
Today. We had a response. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. You're so
And,
prompt.
was the whole board included on
No.
the share? Okay, I think we can share that. Like, that'll give you an update, I think, on like where we're at, kind of in advocating around that. So we'll share that out. Carol, if you can just share that with the board.
I will just also add that we submitted a number of the sort of Northfield campus improvements that have been talked about and sort of surfaced over the past couple of months, because we've been getting a lot of community engagement on it. As our budget micro priorities, they're called micro priorities. They're not necessarily small dollar amounts. It just means for the Department of Finance that they only apply to a single district instead of a sort of citywide approach. So we did submit, I want to say 5 or 6 related to that stretch of Northfield specifically, with an eye towards the Northfield campus.
Thank you. Well, I think we're at time right now, but we'll definitely, so our next community email goes out on Monday. I think I'll reach out to both offices for follow-ups on what to share out for that.
Thank you all so much for having me. I have to go do bedtime. I was getting FaceTime with my kid. I was like, hang up. So that's the only reason I kept looking, because she was FaceTiming. So
Just quickly,
Sure.
her coffee office hours are on June 5th from 9 AM to 10:30 at the town hall collective, 525 Santa Fe. I got you.
Shontel.
Yeah, and we put your email address in the chat, so.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, email me freely, and just know, like, the at-large offices are, we represent all of you. You're welcome to contact us. We don't get the email volume that our amazing district colleagues get, so use this for anything. Thank you.
I'll do more. And also, just a quick announcement, Liz, we have our Quebec Corridor Task Force. It's actually here tomorrow, and it's just an opportunity for us to figure out what we are doing in the Quebec corridor as it pertains to the shelters. And I'll leave it there, that we just want to figure out where are the opportunities to work with you all to figure out answers.
What time is it? So it's at the
5:30.
Cube at 5:30. Okay.
Tomorrow.
And that's kind of in place of the Good Neighbor Committee meeting that we were supposed to have. So, okay. Yeah, anyway, I'll probably be back here tomorrow for that. So, all right, thank you very much for your time. We'll move into the next part of kind of updates from the community. We have Lee Ferguson here from Brookfield Properties. I'm going to share, I think I've got just a quick a PDF you put together, and he'll be giving us just a quick update on kind of the Central Park development.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I'm gonna stand up and talk. I think I can project a little bit better if I stand up. Hi, I'm Lee Ferguson. I'm with Brookfield Properties. I want to introduce myself. I've actually been a resident of Central Park since 2003. I've been working on the project since 2006. With the Brookfield acquisition, I actually was assigned to work on other projects. I worked on other projects for the past 3 years. And then in this past year, I was brought back to be part of the skeleton crew with Brookfield Properties. So I've got a lot of history, but there's just a few of us left, and we're trying to kind of close out our remaining holdings and obligations. But I want to kind of give you guys a summary of what we're involved in. Brookfield has basically 2 significant holdings left. We have 3 blocks around the light rail station. We have a rental community that is, it's just a difficult time to get financing at this point in time. And then the second significant holding that we have, we call Parcel 8, but it's also 563. That's what is up on the board. We're moving forward with the entitlements for this, and this is roughly about 25 acres in between I-70 and Sand Creek, or Union Pacific Railroad, right at the flyover of Central Park Boulevard. So this is a mixed use development. It has the grayed out portion would be the Credit Union of Colorado, and it's the remaining land around the Credit Union of Colorado. And up on Central Park Boulevard is a retail component that is part of this, and it's desired to be a 40,000 square foot specialty grocer with about 20,000 square feet of supporting neighborhood retail around that. And in the corner closest to us is a townhome community, a for sale townhome community of a little under 200 townhomes. And then in the foreground is some multifamily developments. There's about 300 market rate family units and a little under 200 affordable rental units as well. So it's a large mixed use development. It's making its way through the entitlements. We're getting all of the engineering approved, and we should see the district start construction sometime this summer. The earlier, the better. And then at some point this fall, some of the initial transactions can occur. At that point in time, it'd be nice to talk a little bit more about what we would like to see in that retail component. But at this point in time, due to confidentiality and NDAs, I can't really talk about what that tenant mix looks like. But that time frame, I think, will be in the fall when that land acquisition occurs. Oh, and I neglected, also in the foreground is a 3-acre public park that will spill out onto Sand Creek. And that's part of the mixed use development. That retail component, we think that transaction will be this fall. The rest of the development, the infrastructure, is going to take well into 2026. And then those other transactions will occur later in 2026. So a little bit update to filing 63 filings associated with our development. Can I answer any questions?
Yes, anything out there. Thank you. Smile and nod.
It's where the Whole Foods is going.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
On the park design, I guess like at what stage will the park design kind of be coming online? Because I think we had somebody a little over a year ago, someone came and was kind of taking suggestions for some aspects of the park, but it felt very preliminary.
So if you go to the next, this was an early rendering
Yep.
of filing 63, but it's 3D, so it's easier to
Oh,
kind of
okay.
visualize it. Oh, and there's no detail
that-
here. This is a little bit more updated on the current status of it. But unfortunately, the parks design has gone through City of Denver Parks at this point in time.
Okay,
And that is, if it hasn't been approved, it's near approval at this point in time.
I guess.
Is that then gonna be a Denver Park and Rec?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. But the design, is that publicly available as part of the documents that you have with CPD?
Don't know, but I can get back to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Properties were rentals or just.
Actually, I didn't say, but that's a good question. The townhome community will actually have to satisfy the affordable requirements. And so if there are 180 townhomes, approximately 15 or 19 of those townhomes will be income restricted. The multifamily will be a standalone rental affordable community.
Orange is sale, yellow is rental.
No,
It's the other way around.
no, there were actually two different floor plans for the townhomes. So there was like a yellow floor plan and the first multifamily community that you see is the affordable community. The little triangle is the market rate community. There's also a paseo. One last component about this development is the green space between the affordable community and the market rate community is a paseo that terminates at an urban plaza that's part of the retail center. That urban plaza will have a water feature, much like the water features that Conservatory Green has currently right now. And so it's a way to kind of have a protected pedestrian access as well as a gathering spot for that retail component. Thank you, guys.
Actually, so it sounds like affordable housing is not interspersed. Sounds like there's pockets. Almost segregated. I just want to make sure I understand.
Well, for the townhomes, it will be interspersed throughout the rest of the townhomes.
Okay.
For the rental, it's a standalone community.
So the long one is affordable, but the for sale piece is part. There is one more question. Any changes to the roadway entrance and exit at Central Park Boulevard?
Yes, but I cannot articulate what those are because I'm not a traffic engineer, but there were changes to the turn lanes and changes to the traffic signaling that were a part of this entitlement. There's also a right in, right out. There's also another entrance to the development, a separate right in, right out at the very bottom of the page as well.
Okay, I think that in earlier versions, we hadn't seen like a second kind of like.
There was talk when she
Yeah.
was here.
Yeah, no, so that's good to know. Thank you. Okay.
Can do that too. It's bottom. Is that
Kind of where it's starting to go up.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So are you talking about a total of 400 units? Roughly,
Um,
or more?
300 plus little less than 200, so about 500 units of rental. Plus the townhomes.
Like 700 total.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. All right, and then next on the agenda, we have our friends from the shops at Northfield. So we have Dawn, Nathan, and Chris Vogelsang. We're okay. Yeah, so thank you. I don't know if you have any slides to share, or if you just want to talk, I'll stop sharing my screen.
No formal presentation or slides for this evening, but for all that may not know us, I'm Nathan Batchelder with CRL Associates here, part of the Shops at Northfield team, along with Don Cloutier and Chris Vogelsang. Just want to first be grateful and thankful for all the times we've been able to come to this group. I know that there are several new board members here for sure, but I think we first started our conversations back in November. I think it was a snowy, kind of weird day after the election, to just give a quick overview of the proposal at the shops, and then we presented formally in February to this group as well regarding that proposal. And then we had a follow-up meeting, was it 2 weeks ago now? 1 week ago?
It was.
It's running the same.
I think slightly less than 2 weeks ago.
It's running the same now, just on our traffic analysis and our traffic analysis memo that Chris put together, and I believe we sent that to you. So, hopefully we've been able to send those presentations to you, and thanks to Liz for communicating all that information out to the board as well. Just sort of a quick update, sort of in timeline as to where we are now. We went through our Pine Board hearing just a couple of weeks ago. Pine Board unanimously recommended approval for Denver City Council. We just went through the LUDI committee last week, the Land Use Transportation Infrastructure Committee last week, moved through that committee as well. Had first reading last night, and then we're looking to go for second final consideration on June 23rd, I believe. So really here today just to give you sort of an update on that timeline. I know there are also probably a lot of folks who were not at that meeting with respect to the traffic analysis and the traffic memo that we gave. So we have our talented friend Chris Vogelsang here to help give that summary, if that's helpful to you, Liz, or helpful to some of the new board members as well. Or we're also happy just to open it up to sort of questions from the group where we are at today as well.
I think, well, just to kind of contextualize it for folks who weren't at previous meetings, this would be residential development basically at Northfield Boulevard and is it Willow or Verbena? Thank you. And that's basically where the off-Broadway shoes and parking lots are. And so the reason why we're talking about the traffic analysis is just there's a lot of concerns about the kind of increased volume of traffic from, I think it's about 1,000 new residential units would be going in with this.
We looked at it, Don would know, but up to 1,500 is what I looked at in terms of the traffic and transportation.
So, yeah, just to clarify that, the entitlement is seeking full 1,500 density. Our planning calls for 950 right now. So any numbers that Chris is going to articulate are going to contemplate actually 500 units that aren't going to exist based on our phasing plan, which would be 3 phases, pretty much in 300 door tranches. Of course, we're feeling the same pain as far as financing these developments. So timing is absolutely TBD on phase 2 and 3. But ideally, we'll kick off phase 1 sooner rather than later, maybe late 2026. We can, obviously off Broadway, we'll have to do something with that building and really start construction on that first phase. That'll be a lower density product, surface parked, surface park.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
Yeah, and I think for the
Yes.
the traffic analysis memo was about kind of, because something that I'm sure you've heard, not just from us, but from everybody, like that you've met with kind of in the community, is the impact, on the roads there that are already, a little funky. And so I guess, Chris, if you wanted to just provide a brief summary of that, and then I think we also had other questions about kind of the MCA, issue.
Great.
So we'll.
Yeah, I'm happy to give a synopsis. So, we did some, so I'll put it this way. So at this phase in the development process, what was appropriate was to look at kind of like the system capacity, right? So Central Park Boulevard, Northfield Boulevard, like the bigger roads, how busy are they today? What are we proposing? What would that mean to that system kind of as a large scale look, right? And then what we'd anticipate, just as a sort of preempt, is as the development move forward, there'd be more detailed look at like really the fine detail stuff that I think all of you are really interested in. So like, where are the pedestrian connections and how do we make that safe? And so that's in our mind, but that's not the level that we're at just yet. So what I did is I took the conservative number, which makes sense at this level, and looked at how much traffic that might generate in a day. We're on the order of about 5,700 trips in a day, car trips. And that includes, like, that kind of incorporates a mixed use development, like canvas and trying to access transit and make this bicycle pedestrian friendly, all those kind of things, right? And what's really important to understand, like, we're gonna add this residential component to the commercial components. We're expecting a lot of crossover there. At this level, I didn't take a really aggressive reduction for those. So we're talking pretty conservative numbers. And then we had collected traffic data on the big roads, and some smaller roads too, last September, to just get a sense of how many cars are using these roads in a day. And then what I did is I looked at, traffic engineers have sort of a rule of thumb for roadways about how many cars they can carry in a day, right? So at that level, so a big road, a 6-lane road like Central Park Boulevard, you're looking at like 55,000 vehicles a day is probably at its, that's our kind of rule of thumb for when it's very busy and that's its maximum capacity. Northfield Boulevard, more like 37,000 vehicles a day. So right as the lanes come down, it scales down. And what we did then is I looked at the traffic we generate, looked at where, based on patterns that exist in regional infrastructure, where we go. And we kind of found that at the build out time, right now we're using about 30 to 42% of the capacity of the road in a daily way, kind of that big look. And that 20 years out, I also did look at 20 years out, right? Because we want to know in the future, are our investments in infrastructure going to be useful in this and operate like traffic and add our traffic in, and we'll be at like 40 to 56% of capacity in a daily way. And I caveat that, and I said this is the same thing to the group. So that doesn't mean there might not be some operational things at like certain intersections. I know we talked a lot about the squareabouts at Central Park Boulevard and Northfield, and I know MLK and Central Park, that came up earlier in this meeting. And so as we move further down into further detail, we'll start looking at a more granular level at those things and see if there are recommendations to optimize that and make sure it operates well, and then most importantly, safely. I think that was a big focus of the committee. That's a big focus of ours, and we really want to emphasize access to transit and the shops and everything in a walkable way. And even to the fact of kind of looking at permeability on the edges. So like Northfield Boulevard and Central Park, and how can we connect the neighborhood better that way? So that'll happen. Those are in our plan, in our wheelhouse. But that's where we are today, and that's my 3-minute, 30-second synopsis.
Well, something that I'll also mention for like of the, Kathy, Elizabeth and John who are joining us. We recorded the meeting that we had. And so I can share that recording with you all too, that it circulated to the board along with the traffic analysis memo.
It's as good as an episode of Psych or Monk. It's really.
I was describing to them, we're like sickos who really like this kind of stuff, so don't worry about it. But I think that, I think that I guess the framing for CPUN is that you all are proposing, you know, one development among, like, in the context of a bunch of other projects that are already kind of, like, there's east of Central Park Boulevard, there's another set of apartments that are going to be at that CPB Northfield intersection. There's also the Kappa Tower 2 Phase 2 part of that project. So it's not just you all, but we're, as an RNO, are kind of trying to see, like, you know, for our Safe Streets Committee, it's actually just very helpful to have the kind of information that you provide of, like, here's one development and what that looks like. And then we have a few others, you know, and it just helps us with when we talk to the city to, like, have a better picture and a more realistic picture of what's happening.
It's hard to get your head around all the little pieces, right, and put them all
Yeah.
together, but so Denver Regional Council of Governments kind of does some projections for future. We also, when the area was developed, the infrastructure was sized at that time, and we haven't reached build out yet, so probably what you're experiencing is pretty decent levels of service that will reach more like the infrastructure investment purpose eventually here, right? So, so you'll see more people, and that's what that system was built for. But yes, and to your point, I think, so looking at each individual one and the granular level and those connections that really matter, I think that's really important, and that'll be our next step.
Is there an update on the redevelopment of the Macy's building?
No. We see NDAs, right? Keep looking at Lee. We Macy's has vacated. We are working really hard. We might have a really great use. Yeah.
JCPenney is lifetime.
And that's, yeah.
Is that announced? Is that out?
Publicly filed a drawing with lifetime on it. And so, yeah, that did happen. So yes. Sorry.
Any update for the Fridays and Del Taco restaurants?
So Del Taco should become Del Taco. That they experienced an operator issue. And so they should be able to reopen. Red Lobster has a concept coming in. It is not public, but that should be blown and going here. They should be in for permitting now. We don't own that building. So that's just, this is what I know. And then I've got nothing for you on TGI Fridays. I'm really not sure. We don't own that either.
Oh.
By Fridays?
No, it's a private owner. Essentially from the Bank of Oklahoma, Del Taco, Starbucks, Wahoo's, as you go on down, we don't own those. Those were sold off prior to Stockdale's acquisition of the greater mall. And then you've got Olive Garden and Red Lobster. We don't own those. And for them, and Target, we don't own Target. For the most part, we own everything else.
Does anybody have any other questions? Well, you can ask the MCA question if you'd like, because that's.
Well, so when Northfield was initially built, it wasn't part of our homeowners association, the MCA. And but now with these residents moving in, what is, you know, it sort of seems like it would make sense for the property to join the MCA and be members of the HOA, which obviously imposes a fee on residents or the, you know, property developers. So we just wanted to find out where y'all were thinking on that.
We think it conceptually could make a lot of sense. You know, we have a lot of questions about what that looks like and how that just is enacted. We have questions about what other doors does that open as far as being fully ingrained in the MCA and potential complications that could create for either side. And so we've reached out to Jack and we'll sit down and really just going to unpack, you know, both sides of the ledger of all our questions and have a comprehensive understanding. I'll probably ping Lee about, you know, what that means in terms of everything from value to resident experience to you name it. You know, the revenue is certainly good for the MCA. We want to be cognizant of the additional, you know, traffic in the pools that that could create, right? And so we need to make sure that, you know, by adding these units within the MCA, that we've really comprehensively, you know, understood the opportunity. And so it's in no way, shape or form a yes or a no. It could make a ton of sense. And so very quickly, we're going to start to unpack some of those questions that we have.
I was wondering, like, I guess the kind of timeline for that, would that be something that, like, folks would, like, I think is your public hearing on, and vote with city council on the 23rd of June
Yeah.
this year? Is that something that you would have, you would be in a position to say, you know, whether you would be joining like the property owners association or not at that time or before then?
I think we could kind of tip our hand towards some level of commitment, right? I mean, Jack, when we talked about it, there was quite a bit of openness on how far down the road. Is it a full, you know, engagement with MCA? Is it a quasi? Is it a, you know, financial relationship in, you know, context of utilization of the parks and the pools, not the pools? And so we've really got a lot to think about, a lot of questions to ask. You know, sort of reincorporating these housing units back into the MCA in some form or fashion. But you know, I'm just absolutely not a hard no.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions?
Is there a part of your development?
Yes, so we'll have pool, we'll have, you know, required green space. It's really contemplated to be fully independent, but that doesn't mean that there's not crossover.
And just with the traffic, you talked a lot about Central Park and Northfield, but also coming over to, since where that is, Quebec.
Mhm.
And is that part of what you're looking at as well, the impact on Quebec in that whole area, because that gets up to 225?
Yeah, so right now, based on where the development is and how the patterns kind of work, look, I focus mostly on Northfield and Central Park. I've looked at Quebec a little bit. That's also in terms of like the daily capacity. I'm not, that isn't like a red flag to me. But I know Quebec has a lot of operational challenges related to a lot of truck traffic. And there's the event traffic too, right, with Dix and everything. That's probably beyond, like addressing that's probably beyond the scope of what we would do as part of this. What we talked about was using this forum to sort of expose some of those concerns and make sure that we communicate those and help communicate those to Dottie. And I have a lot of relationships over there, and so I can probably help make connections to the area engineer, or, you know, I know you guys talk.
Find out what construction's happening at MLK.
Right, yeah.
At Central Park.
No, I heard that. So, yeah, that's right. So anyway, I'm happy to help as I can, but in terms of the shops in Northfield, like we're probably a little tighter.
And that analysis does compress those traffic counts into that, right? It's not like we sort of just shifted 50-50 back to Quebec, right? You heard him say, we're analyzing 1,500 units, not 950, utilizing Northfield and Central Park, sort of what's a worst case. When I've lived here, you know, since 2016 as well. I was right on Central Park in my townhome. You know, and it was different then. These roads were built for full capacity, full infill. You know, this, you know, culmination of everything that Central Park was supposed to be, and that's what our roads were built for. So a lot of us had the benefit of, you know, 15 years of free and easy travel. And
21.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 20. Yeah. And so, you know, the change is very real, and we all feel it. If I'm leaving the shopping center and it's, you know, 3 o'clock or 2:45, I can probably buzz down Central Park and get home. I'm over by East Bridge, but you know, anytime after 3, you know, I'm probably just shooting over to Havana, and I'll risk the train delay. And so we're all, you know, we're all living it. We're all very understanding of the concerns.
And I think that some of it goes to, like, you know, this is not necessarily on you guys, but just being able to talk to the city about, like, there's increased volume, and like with the way that the light, you know, the kind of like the way that the lights are coordinated, is this kind of optimal, you know, is this optimal, or is this optimal for safety? And if it's not, like, how, you know, what needs to happen in kind of reconfiguring that stuff. So I appreciate the information, because the kind of the more we, you know, it's like the more you know, like the more we know, the more, you know, I think Amy's saying yet another reason to support non-vehicle transportation options and infrastructure. So I agree with that. But yeah, and I think that any solutions to the kind of like increased volume and increased pressure are, they're multi-pronged and they're not just, you know, about cars. And, you know, we've talked to RTD about
Yep.
these things.
Yeah, and I would say with Lifetime, with the food options, and you obviously have living there, there's 45,000 square feet of office there. Everybody cross your fingers for maybe a grocer on the north side. Yeah, well, we'll keep hoping. And so you think about that amenity-based sort of proper community and lifestyle center where where this kind of 10-minute walkable, livable, workable environment is really just kind of Central Park hyper condensed onto our 90 acres. And I think that's going to result, not articulated in our traffic study, obviously, but in more trips not taken to and from your typical multifamily development. You are staying where you are because, your needs are being met so thoroughly. It's no longer, big department stores with shirts and pants. We really have a proper mixed use and amenitized environment. So, those considerations are really our goal, are to create, that beacon for what these, mixed use and dense and, not to mention the transit oriented developments. We think this is pretty optimal, frankly, for the opportunity given within Central Park.
For city slash Brookfield for the details that they had to agree to during the retail, or the financial crisis. In 2000. There was a rumor that Target had a non-compete for grocery stores in that general area. Is that over? And so, or can you say or not? It's not an issue?
It just, it all is what it is. It's a terrible answer. But we're happy.
Okay.
We're gonna make whatever we can happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that just the worst answer you've ever had?
Well, I mean, I've lived here since I've lived here since 2003, and so the whole, and was on the board when the whole Eastbridge crisis, there was a space there, and we had the financial crisis, and we couldn't get another grocery store built because there was a non-compete or right of first refusal. That land. And so I just think there's some sensitivity for those of us that have been around, that there are some of those legal agreements that had to be made when they had to be made. And I just want to make sure that
we, so we're really gonna rewrite everything. There's restrictions, there's prohibited uses, there's just the most random things, the minefields. You can put a candy store there, but not there. Across the entire asset, we have 6 different waivers just for Lifetime alone with different tenants within the shopping center. And it's an absolute rat's nest. And so that's nobody's fault.
No,
but definitely, I do want to acknowledge the fact that, this was contemplated to be exactly what it is, and we are fundamentally trying to change all of it. And so it's not easy, and I'll do my best to be as clear as I can with you guys.
thank you.
Is there any update on I read that you guys are gonna be closing a street down at Northfield Mall?
We are in for permitting right now to close Main Street from 47th up to the roundabout in front of Macy's. Though we call it the park, if you will. That right now, obviously, you got 2-lane street right down the middle of the kind of strip centers facing each other. When we talk about community and lifestyle centers, you don't have cars driving through them. You have real opportunities to spend time. There's just more enhanced child's play opportunities. There's a better event space. There's places for, community events. There's, 100 things that aren't there now. And that's really, national retailers, everyone has really responded very well, to that. And then we'll have those softer park-like elements, permeating more, down to the south side of 47th Street, to the south side, run of shops. We're not gonna close all of Main Street, but there definitely, you'll see more green space throughout that thoroughfare. Weather dependent, the first week of January at 26 would be awesome. So yeah, we'd love to get going on it. We've contemplated a few different iterations of it. And we'd be awfully excited if that timeline worked for us.
We'll move on to the next part, but thanks for your time. And, we'll just continue to be in
The only thing
conversation.
just quickly add
Sure.
is that we hope we can still have open doors where we can come and give you more updates, even past the rezoning. I think a lot of mutual interests of the success is important for all of us, so we want to keep coming back and giving you these updates even after the rezone.
That's
Thank you.
good. Thank you.
Yeah, I have
Um,
to say, I have been on the board since it was inception. This is the first time we've ever had real engagement from the shops at Northfield, minus Forest City's ownership for a short period of time, and we appreciate it. I personally appreciate it. I think it's great.
Oh, yeah, no, I live here. This is, I think I told you guys a story. I'm gonna wear you out with it, but before I was halfway through the phone call when the recruiter called about this gig, I said, that's exactly what I would do. Let's just make it awesome. That's really our goal. So all of the concerns and hopes are so warranted and appreciated on our end as well. So thank you.
Yeah, and actually, I think Heather will be presenting on the community survey. I have we had a question about development, like things people want to see in developments north of I-70. So I can share like that answer with you guys. I mean, it's mostly things that we've already discussed, but just so that you've got it in the survey. It's like over 1,000 respondents versus just this room. But anyway, thanks for your time. I think we should just take a kind of brief break of about 5 minutes. And I'll mute this for the folks on Zoom, just so folks can kind of stretch, and then we'll start the presentation on the community survey. All right, just so everybody knows, I've turned the audio back on so we can start. Okay. All right. Yeah, folks, we're gonna start the next part of the agenda now. I'll share my screen. Okay.
So I put note cards, folks get around the room, for folks to jot down any questions.
Yeah.
Suggestions, at any point. Happy to take those to hopefully try to answer, if not tonight, then in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And also incorporate into.
Yeah, I just as like an introduction, I just want to like thank Heather for Heather and Amanda who's not here tonight. She was quadruple booked. But she prepared, I think it's like a 30-page report, and all of the analysis and any kind of like, I think like the multivariate like analysis in particular, whatever questions we have, like where like that's like when you're looking at more than one variable to get kind of a deeper sense of what the data is saying. If we have any follow-up questions on that, I'm going to be taking note of that, like for further analysis that maybe Amanda can do, or if there are questions that we can't answer. But I'll put this in the chat in the Zoom and then I'll email it. There's actually Amanda's full report is available. I uploaded it, the PDF to Google Drive. Actually, yeah, Brian, if you can share that link, that's where folks will, and then after today, I'll send the slide deck out as well as the full report, but kind of without further ado, I'll let Heather start, and then hopefully it's a lot of material to go through. It's only a tiny part of the survey that we're covering, but we want to make sure we have enough time to just kind of like start a preliminary discussion as well. So I'll move on.
Some of the results. So we started out earlier this year in January to the end of February, getting out through multiple modes, trying to get the survey and understand. So our email list, MCA distribution, huge list of Facebook groups, and I did a lot of that, and flyers all over the neighborhood. At the end, we got about 1,300 responses. I think I mentioned at a previous meeting, we ended up being sort of a victim of like a bot attack or some sort of something, but we had a lot of responses that we sort of determined were not actually. So we ended up with 1,020 total for the analysis. We put it together with questions that have been asked over the years and input from all of the committees on CPUN, as well as a section of demographic questions. And 2 respondents were picked at the end at random to receive that answer.
And they have just like they've gotten their gift cards. Okay.
And this talking about the sort of analysis that Amanda got into. We wanted to look at sort of differences between groups. And so it's not exhaustive, but we looked sort of comparing folks living or working south of 70 and how they answered questions differently, renters versus owners, length of time in the neighborhood. So we're calling it sort of new and not new as defined by 10 years. 10 years is probably still
More than 10 years residents versus fewer than 10 years residents.
Also get discrimination versus not the others, and people who report 0 children in the home or not away in college. So
yeah,
they could have no children or they could have big adult children.
Yeah.
This is sort of the spread of what the question because the Central Park. So we've got folks who have been back to the very beginning and just here this year answer the survey. And what neighborhood do you live in? So I feel like we got pretty good representation across all of the neighborhoods, which is great. And some folks also in the Aurora part and some that answer I think that were at 80207 zip code that were at business.
Okay.
There's a few houses right there by the United training center that are 80207.
Oh, interesting.
Well, maybe.
Okay. All right.
So we asked, a range of demographic questions. We asked just to kind of better understand who's filling out the survey. They're all optional, you don't have to answer them. Give us an idea of who's answering, but also who are we not reaching, to sort of help inform future outreach.
And just for folks, like in looking at these tables, since it's a lot of numbers, and if folks are not necessarily familiar with this, so N means the raw number of responses that, correspond to the prompt, and then in parentheses is the percentage of respondents. So just so that folks are clear on what that means. I guess any takeaways from like these demographics?
I think the largest group combined was folks 35 to 55, so, perhaps, the range of people who would have children at home. But we'll get to a question later that, I think it's like a third of people who answered the survey said they don't have children, so
Mhm.
kind of looking at how that breaks out.
Yeah, and just another thing that I'll link out to, so the City Council District 8 office, because we want to get a sense of how representative are the people who respond to the survey, representative of the demographics of the community as a whole. And so what I was hoping to do, but it's actually not, it's a little bit of apples to oranges, so it'll take a little bit more work. The City Council office actually did profiles of each neighborhood, the demographic profiles of each neighborhood in District 8, using census data and the American Community Survey data. The thing is, the way that they did it, and I don't know if it has to do with like census tracts, but they split the Central Park information for south of I-70 and north of I-70. So it's not like an hour. I mean, I guess we could ask Amanda to like split this. Also north, but it's not as easy to look at like their information and make a direct comparison because they have a geographic split that we don't have represented here at the moment. But I will link out to those. And so it was Alyssa Dawson in the District 8 office. It, I think, took a lot of work, and I just wanted to make sure she gets credit for that. So I'll share that also with some of the follow-up information on this.
Heather, so were any groups underrepresented or overrepresented?
Males and females.
Yeah.
more Women answered the survey than males, and the neighborhood overall is like 50-50. So
Yeah.
women are answering the survey.
And I would think like, I don't know if like just kind of like trends in like who responds to surveys in general, but also when you distribute the survey primarily on social media, that like also you also have kind of like the gender split, I think, in who's using it, or at least Facebook groups.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And a lot of demographics is, reported household income, so a little over 40% are.
My messes it up as I
So,
change.
but quarter folks didn't answer the question.
Which I guess, at first you're like, oh, but most of the people in the survey respondents at least are married to income home potentially.
Yeah. Well, I think that also like I think that it is interesting to look at like, is this fairly representative of kind of the like household income demographics that you've got from the census? And so that's a question that we need to answer when we look at that data. Yeah. Yeah. So race or ethnicity. Yeah. Okay, and then also I prefer not to answer as about 10%. Okay. Oh, so this was,
So this gives us some information. We asked where do you get your information about the neighborhood? A lot of folks, this is a check all, so a lot of people check more than one. So we said local news sources, that was things like Denverite, the Denver Post, Colorado Public Radio.
TV news.
social media, like Facebook groups, email newsletters, CPUN, MCA, conversations with neighbors, school PTA, or attending community meetings and events. So by and large, while not huge margin, but the local resources. So
Yeah. And I think just to like kind of be a little more precise, I think I didn't include the first part of the question because it was a long question, but I think the exact wording of the question was something like apart from, apart from your own direct experience. So, obviously people's thoughts and opinions are like informed largely by their lived experience of the neighborhood, but we wanted to kind of get a kind of other context on that with this question.
Question is you're asking about ways you're involved in your community. Again, this can be checked more than one, so this is raw numbers, not percentages. So folks in the neighborhood are involved in a pretty wide number of ways. Also, folks who don't volunteer.
Mhm. And I think we added this question. I guess I'm just kind of giving like some context on like, why do we include this question? I mean, just as a registered neighborhood organization, just kind of understanding, like for our outreach efforts, like just understanding what is it that people are already doing or are willing to do, or what sort of activities do people identify as like what keeps them involved with their community? Yeah.
Go to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because we have another question about CPUN meetings and we'll come back to. Go ahead. Oh, did you want to go back?
So then you go to slide previous to this, where do you get your information? And the
Mhm.
smallest thing is attending community events.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
interesting to see.
Yeah, I like to have that. There's
Yeah.
certain things that don't quite add up and how to ask questions better. Yeah.
And how do you drive that number up on the previous slide so that less people are getting it from,
Well, yeah.
people are getting.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, if you wanted to, I mean, I suppose like if you wanted to do a follow-up question, like breaking out, because it's attending community meetings, events, or performances is a really broad category. So that was, I think we kind of put all of those together because it is a form of involvement, but it's a more passive form of involvement. And I would say that my guess in looking at those two slides, my guess would be that it's more community events and performances, like going to the concerts on the green or the movies that are on the green or things like that versus like, hey, like there's, yes, I was going to say more than than one of us is involved in an arts related organization. I just wanted to make sure that was represented. There's dozens of us. So anyway, we can move on. So the satisfaction question.
Yeah, there's a lot of info on this. That's how satisfied are you with different aspects, amenities, perspectives living in Central Park. So it's on a scale from very satisfied on the left to very dissatisfied on the right. Again, the first number is the number of people that responded in that way and then what percent that represents. So grocery options, very satisfied, dissatisfied. Kind of surprising that entered in at greater than 50% sort of satisfaction. Given I think maybe a lot of us feel and a lot of the comments that we didn't really get out. Also greater than 50% is parks and outdoor recreation, Central Park Rec Center, social connections with neighbors, and the overall quality of life. Those all sort of rank really high in positive satisfaction. We're pretty dissatisfied with traffic. And about 67% are dissatisfied, or very dissatisfied with crime. As crime, we know.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, and we have other questions too that are like kind of provide other context around what people mean around that. So, so this was part of the work that Amanda did, was doing the comparisons like within these categories. So I wanna,
Yeah, we can, everything here, but some sort of highlights are, folks living north of 70 are more frequently dissatisfied, with the neighborhood, looking at sort of all the factors on the table before. Renters are more dissatisfied with housing affordability, social connections with neighbors. Folks who have, reported experience of discrimination are more frequently dissatisfied with the neighborhood. And folks reporting 0 children are more frequently satisfied about crime, less frequently satisfied about social connection.
go ahead,
And,
Nick. Oh, we have a question.
I was just wondering, like, what was the disparity between the average compared to what these people like rated for you to say like they were more satisfied or less satisfied?
So I think we were, I don't know the absolute numbers that she looked at, but I think she was defining satisfied, very satisfied as like a bigger category of like satisfaction. And dissatisfied is very dissatisfied as dissatisfied.
But I'm like wondering.
What's the mean? Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Because, you know, if a group was like 1% more satisfied or something like that, maybe you would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More satisfied.
I don't like the p-value, like how, yeah, I don't know how much.
How she did.
How much
Yeah.
more, just. Knowing Amanda.
I was gonna say, that's what I'm writing down. So I guess it's I guess, so just so that we can give her the follow-up question, like what is the mean against which you're making these comparative statements? Okay,
And it may not be the same.
yeah. Okay. Let me move next. And this was for the largely around the shops in Northfield, since it was a.
Development north of 70, and I guess there's still that area that's typically south of 70. But people really want a range of amenities. Grocery store still comes in at number 1. The restaurants, getting around, better traffic safety, multiple connections between neighborhoods, and making it more walkable. Green space.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
These were questions from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. But I think have been asked.
Yeah, we should probably look at the year over year. Like, I think that's a follow-up for it, is like, look at those responses year over year, at least from I think the past 2 surveys had that question.
Overall, the takeaway here is generally people agree with the statements that they feel welcome in the community. The residents feel connected and able to integrate, that they're treated fairly in Central Park, and cultures and belief systems are found.
But then,
So if I added the math, it was 20 to 30% actually were neutral and below on those. So it's another example of the majority, it was mostly white folks in the South. So it does make
yeah,
you wonder
who's, well, I guess like that is the question, is like, who is like if you can look at like the demographic information on who rated that as like neutral and below. And I think we do have some comparisons, information, like on a later slide.
At least for the survey respondents, we'll see what it comes back to with census. Census data, I imagine it's probably fairly similar, that it's a really homogeneous neighborhood. So, you know,
Well, the other thing,
everybody looks the same.
historically, if you go back and look at that slide, it was 80% were white.
Yeah.
Amanda is very careful not to try to draw conclusions from that aren't statistically relevant. So when you look at the numbers are small, and you could really skew some of the stuff.
But it's interesting though, because when we did the DEI survey, was it in like 2022, I think, Mandel? Was, yeah, but I mean, then you looked, I mean, they're very, very small numbers of the folks, but then when you look at, it's like folks who identify as like Black, Indigenous, or people of color, like have disproportionately, like their response of experiencing discrimination is disproportionate even to like the percentage that they make up within the neighborhood or among like survey respondents. So we've done some work looking like a little kind of digging a little bit deeper into that in a previous survey that I can share. And I think Amanda also did look there is another aspect to it that Amanda looked at that's on this slide.
Yeah, so then the next question asks about if you ever experienced discrimination in the neighborhood. Yeah, this is one that's been asked over the years. 85% have not experienced discrimination. Certain categories below there, these are percentages that folks have answered. The highest category is political affiliation, age, sort of on down. So Amanda did look at another sort of analysis in this. Kind of a long statement to pull apart, but when counting the number of self-reported demographics, which person identifies, respondents who identify with more than one from the demographic section of more than one historically marginalized demographic was associated with reporting feeling discrimination.
And I think it was like a higher, like the more of the kind of like the more of those demographic identities that somebody had checked off, the more likely, but yeah, the higher the percentage. So
Comparing sort of the welcome sentiments, those four statements, a couple slides ago, and experiencing discrimination. Renters, which was about 5%, the respondents are more likely to disagree with the statement that they felt connected, that it was easy to feel connected and integrated. Newer residents, some people who've been here for less than 10 years, are less likely to feel welcome, less likely to feel connected and integrated. And people who have reported experiencing discrimination are more frequently disagree with the board welcome statements. What are the safety questions?
sure.
Sorry, there's so much in these slides.
It's a lot.
Yeah, sorry, it is a lot. That's
Bear with me. I would hate for anyone to receive this information and think that at least this board feels like we're patting ourselves on the back because, oh, look, over 80% of the people feel welcome here and have never experienced it. It was because we all look, believe, love the same, like, for the most part.
I was gonna say, if you look around the table, not all of us look the same. So,
Well, I know, but I'm saying of the survey
Yeah.
respondents.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
this room.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's partly why we wanted to be looking at
Yeah.
like, here are these comparisons and trying to understand, like, for people who do like report discrimination or don't feel welcome, what are some of the demographic, differences within the community.
Right.
So yeah, that's, yeah.
I just like think not, we ever get to zero. People saying they don't report any discrimination for any of the categories, no. But I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we thought that, oh, look, it's so great, but it's because it is a fairly homogeneous neighborhood. So,
Yeah, I don't think it's at all like passive approval pre-money.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, and I'm not getting that from you at all.
Yeah.
Or you, Liz, and I'm sure Amanda doesn't feel it's good to make that way either.
Yeah.
It's just.
how do we make people feel more welcome?
Yeah.
I'm hoping
Well-
there'll be, after this, then we'll dive into, okay, how do we improve on some of these categories?
Well, the idea is partly to like, this is a baseline of information that we need other context around as well. But hopefully it can guide, some of the work that we want to do over the course of the next board year.
So we asked, this is asking questions about safety for pedestrians, wheelchair users, bicyclists, drivers in the neighborhood. Definitely lots of concern about traffic safety. 57% of folks, already said that they're very concerned with the Central Park and MLK intersection. So it's good to hear from City Council office that you're aware of that.
Yeah. And I think we specifically, I think that because there was already bond money around it, we wanted to ask the question in order to like be able to like, this is very low hanging fruit. In terms of like, just like what is actionable compared to other unsafe intersections in the community.
And doing something would really address concerns.
Yeah. And then we also have a note, just because there was a free response question, please share any additional thoughts you have about traffic safety in Central Park, particularly traffic safety around schools. And by far, I think it's almost twice as many comments as any other free response question. We got 531 individual comments, which I am like slowly like kind of trying to track. Like, I mean, largely it is around intersections and schools. But just kind of looking at like the qualitative like responses for that. But it's just worth noting in itself, like how passionately people like feel on this subject and kind of wrote at length about it.
The health and safety questions, and this sort of ties into the question that was asked earlier, was about crime, satisfaction with crime, and it was like 2/3 of folks said there's sort of an elevated concern about crime.
And then it's like,
we hear about half say that Central Park is a safe community. So you've got one question, 2/3 have elevated concerns about crime, and another question, half say it's a safe community. So I think there's a lot to look at.
Yeah.
There.
And that's the next slide. I think we get into that a little bit. Yeah. Or actually, I wonder if it might just be street racing is what we looked at, but we can look at the full report also, because I think Amanda has that on there. But yeah, so this is, it's just, this is kind of attention because it is around perception of safety and crime. And so part of it is, I think we need updated information like from Lieutenant Hines on kind of crime stats in our precincts, but also it's just making those statistics that they provide meaningful is like also can be like something that we're working towards. So it's also, again, not just kind of like, let's pat ourselves on the back because things look good. But this is definitely like attention in those two responses that I think that for folks who are interested in the health and safety committee, like digging deeper into that, I think would be really good. And then some kind of at the last, like it was when we were meeting last week, I just kind of at the last minute asked Amanda to look at like the people who answered about like their dissatisfaction like with crime in the neighborhood, look at like where folks get their news. And it was just very interesting. So as perceptions of crime can differ with news sources, we looked at differences in news sources by self-reported crime satisfaction. We found significant differences in reported sources of local news for people reporting crime concerns compared to other respondents. So most frequently, people with crime concerns reported social media as their source of local news. So 79% of or it can be the Facebook group. Yeah. We didn't actually ask which social media, but that's a good question versus 65. Yeah. So 65% for people who did not express that level of concern. And then in contrast, when you flip it, traditional news sources such as Front Porch, Denver Post, Denverite, Colorado Public Radio, 78% versus 85%, and email newsletters were less frequently a news source for people reporting concern with crime versus others. So it's just some more information to chew on.
Right, CPR, like, are they not reporting them? I mean, that would be the.
Well, there's like the if it bleeds, it leads, like kind of. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah. I think we could add like TV on there. Mhm. I think that we kind of have gone back and forth on like the nuances of it also, and like it's like which social media, but I think what we were thinking of, and maybe we need to ask different questions to get at it, is that social media is like algorithmically determined and the algorithm is maximizing like negative emotional responses. And so versus like, I mean, it's also, news coverage is curated. There's an editorial process and editorial decision making like that shapes also what you're getting for news. But I do think that the algorithm versus no algorithm is part of that, and what the algorithm is maximizing.
For instance, like, I have a lot of concern around crime in my neighborhood, everyone's car getting broken into. I've never felt unsafe.
That's interesting.
That's how I was.
Yeah.
Or it could be like, I feel safe.
I don't want crime here, but at the same time, I feel safe. Is that what you like?
Yeah, no, I mean, crime is an issue.
Mhm.
It doesn't make that crime doesn't make me feel unsafe. That makes sense.
So it's like a
Yeah.
bodily thing versus, yeah.
Yeah.
So you feel safe personally.
Always.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe
The
that's
crime is an
important
issue.
to- Yeah.
Mm.
Separate out. Well, I think in some of the open-ended responses at the end where we say, is there anything else you want to share about the neighborhood? Most of the comments were, not most, but a lot of the ones about satisfaction with the neighborhood were related to feelings of crime. So things I think we need to ask more about, but
Yeah.
that fall into that bucket are like hearing gunshots, car break-ins, car theft, shoplifting. I think those are kind of like the big buckets that get mentioned.
That's maybe, 67% of the respondents were women. I think women feel more vulnerable.
We are.
As women, we are more vulnerable. So I think maybe that.
I think that might actually be something Amanda could actually just look into, like what was the gender split on these questions?
I mean, you might feel really safe personally as a man, but as a woman, my personal safety, I think probably is very different.
Yeah.
Right? I'm more concerned about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I will say it is 8:34, so it's like, it is later. So, but I think that this is like, no, I know. Don't worry, we'll go. Yeah, no, but this is like, I do think that these are like the conversations that I want us to be having as a neighborhood organization. I think that in our committees, like, but so that it's not just kind of like, here are top line bullet points of what's going on, what event to go to or another meeting to go to. Like, I do think part of the function of an RNO should be these kinds of conversations. So I'm really glad we're having them.
And not all the committee questions are even represented tonight, so.
Yeah.
Next month's, like, you have more to.
Yeah, and I'll be emailing out each of the committee stuff. Plus, I mean, do you want to send out like the full free response, like things for at least the traffic one? And I was gonna say, it is like very, like, poor Heather had to go through all of them, and it is very emotionally draining. And like, I'm sure you felt beat up, like, yeah.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
like
No,
put
I agree.
the open responses into AI and say, what should we?
Like
what should
summarize
we
this,
do?
yeah.
And you have. to
Well,
pick the greatest.
I was gonna say, actually, I'm going question by question, like for the traffic stuff and just kind of throwing them into different buckets. And there's one like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Like it's like, I want to say something, but it's not factually accurate at all. Anyway, so I think we'll kind of run through these as quickly as we can, and then we will have time. Basically, next month, it's just community partner updates and us talking about committee work and what we want to do for the next board year. There's no guest speaker, so we'll have more time on this. So, okay.
Well, some north of 70 folks living north of 70 are going to be more impacted by street race. Yeah.
Mhm.
Runners are more likely to report having encounters with DPD, but also by rating those encounters as good or excellent.
Yeah.
Also reporting being more impacted by street racing. Folks who reported experiencing discrimination more frequently, like disagree with the statement of Central Park as a city.
And then since we had a thing, I included this, like, it's a long Metro District question, but basically the kind of takeaway from it was a long question about the Metro District. Most people aren't sure and need more information. And since we had, I think the presentation on Metro Districts a couple of months ago was really good. And I think kind of like doing more education around that is like good for our community, just kind of demystifying. Yeah. Well, I think that the response that most people don't know is a useful, like that is a useful takeaway.
There's a lot of what is
Yeah, and we did link out to like the
Yeah,
thing.
and having just ran on the board, there were basically 400 people, or I guess 700 people that returned ballots. I mean,
Out of like
30,000 ballots sent. So
wow,
that's,
yeah.
That's just sick.
But I just don't think this was a well worded or relevant.
Mhm.
We needed a lot of wordsmithing to get the question.
To get to that question. No, I think that, I mean, I agree. But it is kind of like, I don't know. It's a challenging question, and it is also useful to like gauge high information versus low information on like being able to answer it.
I think your question around the special district might be appropriate, but not with this one.
Yeah. Well, that's the one that Jack sent us. So like, yeah. Yeah. So these are kind of just like miscellaneous, like kind of as we're getting to the end of this.
Here's that 81.5% of the people who responded to the survey have not attended a CPUN meeting or event in the last year. But of those, they did provide a lot of ideas and thoughts for topics for meetings. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to still get information out.
Well, I think that, okay, so my takeaway from that, so anyway, just one, I think that Amanda, who's not here tonight, but we can talk with her about it next month. She is very interested in like the block captain, like kind of redoing the block captain, I guess, program, which I was not, I don't think I lived here when it was a going concern. So I'm curious about that and curious about what it looks like at scale. But
the problem is
yeah,
it doesn't scale
yeah,
without investing a whole lot of
a
money
lot.
in technology.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It just became very, very cumbersome to manage it and
Yeah.
Keep it up to date and provide the information,
Yeah.
you need, we'd have to make an investment in the website.
Yeah.
To be able to.
And I think that something here also is just like in terms of like outreach and what sort of things people do want to attend, like people are interested in having a block party. I think there was another question about having a block directory, like just being able to get to know who lives around me. And so I think there's more work we can do around outreach in following up on that. with the 81.5% of respondents not attending a CPUN meeting, I'm like, most people don't want to attend meetings for the sake of going to meetings. Like, I actually like, I mean, I am not that person, but I completely understand that. And I actually think we shouldn't just have meeting. Like, it means that if we want to get people involved, we should be doing things other than just holding meetings. And so that's why we also had the question on like, how are you involved in your community? And it's, a whole range of options that do not involve just attending a meeting. And then we'll talk more about the committee. We'll send out more information on the other committee specific questions like education, sustainability, outreach, and talk about that next month. These are the meeting topics people are interested in for CPUN meetings: development updates, traffic and safety, updates from elected officials. I mean, and that's kind of what we had tonight. And then if you want to talk about, since you like had to go through like slogging through all of the open-ended responses, Heather.
Yeah. I kind of tried to bucket them sort of by themes, really broad. A lot of comments, both positive and critical of neighborhood satisfaction. People really want more services, especially more services for seniors. That was mentioned a lot. There's a lot of concerns around development, desire for amenities, comments about perceived crime. Here again is package thefts, car break-ins, auto theft, hearing gunshots, and just a lot of mentions, general feelings of safety. A lot of comments about the MCA or MCA attributed items, things people think the MCA should be doing around code enforcement, for shoveling, maintaining yards, for having their bins out. And also lots of comments about traffic safety here, and also the traffic safety question. Sort of things that were pulled out were a lot of concerns about people driving on ATVs or like those little mini bikes, both on sidewalks and the streets. The semi tractor trailers in the area around the post office, just over here, and also getting like stuck in the alleys by 7-Eleven. So those were.
Yeah, the thing that I just want to highlight on the MCA and MCA attributed items is that when I read those comments, I think that the people like writing those comments thought we were the MCA. Like that was like, there was definitely like a real confusion about who was putting out the survey and what CPUN is responsible for versus MCA. So, and I think that, yeah, that was something that I noted and was like, yeah, like it's kind of a constant thing. Oh, do you want? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And even like, just in terms of like, oh, when we're like, oh, we're Central Park United neighbors, like, oh, you're the people who put on like the concerts on the green. And we're like, no, that's not us. We have, they're like, you must have a lot of money or something like that. And we're like, no, we have no money. So yeah, I think so. Anyway, oh, go ahead.
I was just on the last one. I'm curious if that's a new comment compared to last surveys around the ATVs, the motorbikes. I know my perception is there's a lot more of that in the parks even right now.
I think so.
Oh, well, there was a whole rash of ATVs through the neighborhood. That was south side.
That was okay. I'm not
Problem.
familiar with that.
Yeah, oh, they were.
I've seen it on like the west, I was gonna say the Westerly Creek, like, yeah.
Dead nightmare. You're right, Eva.
We're seeing a lot. I know just like, I mean, people are posting videos driving through stop signs at night when it's dark.
Do people send those also to like the traffic enforcement? I guess like, does it get reported to anybody who has enforcement authority? So that has.
Like it's good responsible parents for their kids, but I don't know, it's definitely something that's, I think, a bigger and bigger issue.
Yeah. Anecdotally, like just in my own experience, I've seen it more, I would say, over the past 5 years than the previous 5. All right, well, we're gonna end soon, but I do think you should share like the one comment.
We deleted a colorful comment that the survey didn't address any of their concerns or anything they had to say, and the survey was so.
Yeah, they were like, Yeah, well, it was just kind of like, this didn't address any of my concerns, these questions, like, I don't, like, my neighbors and I don't care about this stuff. But they didn't say what they did actually care about. It was just kind of like, great, now we don't have any information to move on.
Did they provide their email so that they can get?
Well,
so you know,
we
a
also-
gift certificate?
Well, I was gonna say, we also did say, like, we will only use it for the gift certificate thing. We won't,
Oh.
contact you. So anyway, I guess we've addressed a lot of questions. We have more questions. I think just food for thought are like main takeaways, like after I send you all this, I think that can be part of our conversation in June. And then the big question in June is, how can this guide our planning and work over the next board year? And I guess kind of the shadow question to that is like, what information don't we have, or what else do we need to know to help guide, like, or what else do we need to be thinking about and considering when we're thinking about what we want to do as a board and what we want to do in our committees over the next year. And then anyway, we can take this, I think, to the communications and outreach meeting, but just, we have kind of like a number of lessons learned on this, or different considerations for the 2026 survey. And then just,
Liz, before we get off the
Yes.
survey, did we do any comparisons year over year? Did Amanda go back and do any of those? Because I think as a follow-up for
Yeah.
communication outreach, we should go back and see if there are any trends. Because historically, one of the reasons why we've kept so
Yeah.
many questions is to see some of the trends. And I think maybe we could.
I think,
dive a little deeper.
I don't think she's done it yet. And I think there were slight differences in some of the ways that we did the questions this year versus the way Mark had done them in a couple of previous years. So like, his satisfaction was like a 10-point scale versus a 5-point scale. And it just kind of made it crazy for people to like be answering like such a wide scale on their phone screen. So we shortened it. But yeah, no, I think year over year, I've got that down as like another follow-up. Just for June, we've got the Join or Die screening on Thursday, June 12th at the Holiday Theater on 2644 West 32nd Avenue. Raise your hand if you've already RSVP'd for this. If anybody is interested in carpooling, I've got 4 spots in my car. So. Oh, already. But yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So like, if you wanna go.
Great.
Yeah, but it's like, just to remind folks, it's a documentary, because it's a terrible title because it doesn't tell you anything about what the content of it is. But it basically is a documentary about Robert Putnam's research on like joining civic organizations and kind of a decline in that.
And may I add that if you aren't going, and some people will not, it is on Netflix.
Yeah, just watch it.
I've seen it on Netflix, and I watched it on Netflix because we were asked to support it, and we were.
Yeah, I
we
watched it
wanted to
also.
know if it was worth supporting, and it is. So you have the opportunity to watch it, and please do.
Yeah.
Please watch it.
Yeah, it's very good. And just, yeah, our next CPUN meeting is June 17th, 6:30 PM. We have officer elections. We'll have some extra time for community partner updates, and then we'll do kind of the follow-up discussion on the survey and our committees. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that as we get closer to it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Somebody's past
Okay.
bedtime.
Yeah. I do want to just really quickly on the officer elections, and then I'll let everybody leave. Is that, anyway, if anybody's, I guess, like, we're all up, like, so I'm board president, Carol is vice president. Brian is treasurer. Trisha is cycling off and is currently secretary, but we need a new secretary. David has, expressed interest in it. So, but if anybody is interested, let us know. If you guys will have me, I'm interested in staying on. So,
I don't want to try to pass over 20 years of.
I was gonna say, he's been the only treasurer for 20 years. So, but anyway, we can talk about that, but that'll be just at the beginning of the next meeting. So, okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for hanging in there. I'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Okay. How do I stop?